Okay, good afternoon and welcome everyone for the webinar Nuclear Power in Ontario today. I'm Scott, CFO from A.C.E. Before we started, I would like to introduce our organizations and members. Active on Community Engagement, A.C.E. is an Ontario-based nonprofit organization that focuses on giving back to the community. We founded in 2020. Our mandate focused on the following three major areas. First, serving our local community. Second, supporting young generation to engage in politics. And three, promoting the awareness of municipal politics. So for the next, I will also introduce our 7 board members here. So Yan Zhou, who is the president of A.C.E., also the secretary of Toronto Catholic Lions Club, and Rich Lau, who is VP Communication, also a well-known news anchor among Chinese community across Canada. And Cliff Chen, VP Research and Development, also an engineer and instructor at Ryerson University. Peter Ip, VP Operation, also a co-founder of marketing solution provider, Legacy Media. And Benny Zhu, who is VP Secretary, currently is going for the MBA degree at University of Calgary. And I'm Scott Shi, CFO of A.C.E., also a co-founder of local mass manufacturer EPS Care Technologies. And also thank you, Professor Pereira as our guest speaker today. And now I will pass the mic to Cliff Chen, who will be the host today. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you everyone for joining us today for our webinar. And let me start with introducing our friend, who is also my classmate and my former colleague at Ontario Tech University, Professor Sharman Pereira. He's a professional engineer of Ontario who has been teaching students interested in science, technology, engineering, and math for over 20 years as a graduate student at Ryerson University and associate teaching professor at Ontario Tech University. He teaches courses in engineering design, environmental effects of radiation, integrated engineering lab, and nuclear reactor design. As a part of the nuclear reactor design course, students learn how to design nuclear reactors following the Canadian and international regulatory requirements, ensuring the public's safety as the prime directive. Sharman also manages the projects under the Sigma Lab, where undergraduate and graduate students get opportunities to work on industry-related projects outside their regular classwork with the help of faculty members, staff, and industry partners to improve experiential learning skills. On top of his teaching responsibilities, Sharman has been managing undergraduate teaching labs for the Faculty of Energy Systems and Nuclear Science for the last 14 years. In addition, he took a leading role in establishing the Energy Research Center, which houses almost 32 laboratories and facilities in the area of nuclear, radiation science, renewable energy, non-destructive testing, instrumentation and control, and virtual reality. Sharman has been working with virtual reality VR since 2008. His research in VR has focused on developing VR and AR applications for the nuclear industry for teaching and training by employing custom-made user interfaces. In addition, he has been using computational fluid dynamics methods for nuclear, radiological, mechanical, and aerospace applications since the year 2000. Prior to joining academia, Sharman worked as a systems designer for both the aerospace and automotive industries. So please welcome Professor Sharman Pereira.
Thank you, Cliff and Scott, for the introduction. As Cliff mentioned, my name is Sharman Pereira. I hope everyone can see my screen and hear me okay. Okay, so that's been established. Okay, I would like to continue our lecture on nuclear in Ontario, as well as the application of nuclear for medical as well as isotope generation. So today, I am going to talk about nuclear power plants in Ontario and how the nuclear power plants work and how we produce energy as well as isotopes and how we utilize them for the betterness of Canadians. So as you can see in this slide, before actually I started talking about nuclear power plants, I would like to take your attention into nucleus. Okay, so here we have two isotopes of uranium. So uranium is one of the elements that we usually use in a nuclear reactor. So we have uranium-238 and uranium-35 atoms. In an atom, we have two structures, one which is mainly the nucleus in the center and the electrons around it, which are surrounded. So in the nucleus itself, you can see protons and neutrons. In a stable atoms, number of protons are usually equal to neutrons, but in an isotopes, number of neutrons can change. Also, the number of electrons usually equal to number of protons. Okay, so in the nucleus itself, they bound together using the nuclear energy. So we are going to manipulate that energy in two nuclear reactions. So in general, we have two nuclear reactions that is known to us. So one we call is the nuclear fission, and the other one we call nuclear fusion. So in nuclear fission, what we do, we break a uranium-235 atoms with what we call is a slow neutrons. Okay, the neutron is moving slow compared to fast neutrons. So what happens now when this neutron absorbed into uranium-235 nucleus, it's become unstable, then it splits into two, releasing energy as well as 2 to 3 neutrons. So these neutrons will eventually travel through the medium, reduce its energy, and it's available to continue with the next generation of fission. Okay, so this fission reaction would continue as a chain reaction inside a nuclear reactor, generating energy. Eventually, that energy would be transferred into electricity through the means of mechanical processes. So in nuclear fusion, isotopes of hydrogen, which is a deuterium and tritium, so we expose them into a very high temperature and we combine them into helium as well as the neutrons. So through that process as well, we can generate energy, release energy. So you can see a comparison of the energies between the fission as well as fusion. Usually in the fission reaction, we generate around 200 mega electron volts, which is usually equivalent to around 3.2 times 10 to the minus 11 joules. Okay, in a fusion reaction, so it can be two types of fusion you can find out. We call DT, which is the deuterium to tritium fusion, which generates around 17.6 mega electron volt energy. And the DD fusion, which is the deuterium to deuterium fusion, generates around 3 to 4 mega electron volts energy. So the picture that you can see to your right on the fusion side, it's a fusion reactor from JET, J-E-T, Joint European Technologies. So you can see a glow onto the right side, which is generated from the plasma from the atom. So the picture onto your left side, it's a fission reactor. So as the fission occurs, so you generate these particles, you generate neutrons. As a secondary interactions, you generate like electrons, gamma rays. So as the particles travels through the water, so they are traveling faster than the speed of light. So when that happens, so it generates a blue color glow, we call that as a Cherenkov radiation. So when you look at a nuclear reactor, most of the time it's underwater. So you can see a blue glow that is generated by the particles that is traveling through the water. So as a result of nuclear fission, you generate isotopes such as like barium-144 and kryptonium-89 that you can see. They usually decay. As they decay, it generates heat. So I think when you look at the Earth, the core of the Earth, the temperature of the core of the Earth is around 6,000 degrees Celsius, which is very close to the surface temperature of the sun. In the sun, usually what we happen is what we call is a fusion nuclear reaction, okay? So, but when you look at the corona happening inside the sun, the temperature can go up to like 15 million degrees of Celsius. But on the surface, it's around like 5,500 degrees Celsius, which is very close to the temperature of the core of the Earth. So when we look at the fission chain reaction closely, as you can see here, we have a very slow neutrons coming and impacting with the uranium-235 nucleus. So when that happens, so this uranium-235 becomes uranium-236. So it becomes so unstable that is going to split apart. As they split, it releases energy as well as releases neutrons. Those neutrons would actually travel through we call is a moderator. The moderator means in a region where you can slow down the neutrons, so you can increase the probability of interaction of these neutrons with another uranium-235 atom. So usually when you generate neutrons in a fission reaction, they really move in fast. But in order to increase the probability of interactions, we need to slow down by using what we call is a moderator. So most of the nuclear reactors, you can see a moderator. Sometimes they use as a regular water, sometimes they use heavy water. In the CANDU technology that we use here in Canada, we use heavy water as the moderator. So then those slow down neutrons will eventually interact with the nucleus and this chain reaction will continue. So as you can see, as a part of a nuclear fission, you generate, we call fission fragments, which are those two elements that were broken apart into. So they can come up as a gas forms or it can come up as a solid form. So you can see these are the different types of gases that are generated as a result of fission. So you can see tritium, krypton-85, xenon, xenon-133, metastable xenon-133, and xenon-135, which they have a different half-life. So what do you mean by half-life? Half-life is pretty much how long would it take for a mass of M to become a mass of half, which is M/2. So usually when you have radioisotope, it's usually spontaneously decaying, releasing either beta or gamma rays. And eventually the mass of that become half of its original mass. The time that's going to take, we call it a half-life. Some of the isotopes that have been generated in fission reaction has a very short half-life. Some of them can have a very long half-life, can go up to millions of years, okay? So when we look at the nuclear power plant distribution throughout the world, okay, so many countries do actually utilize nuclear energy, so including Canada. So most of the nuclear power plants that you find in the world are called a pressurized water reactor, means the pressure inside is very elevated pressure. It can be into orders of 10 to 12 to 14 megapascal of pressure inside these pressurized water reactors. Okay, so pressurized water reactors can be divided mainly into two. One, they use the regular water, right? It's like the tap water you find. The other one, we use heavy water, which we use in most of the Canadian nuclear power plants. So as you can see, we have PWRs, around 304 PWRs, which uses we call enriched U2O. Okay, so enriched U2O means like, when you when you get the uranium from the ground, usually we call is a natural uranium, which has around 0.7 of uranium-235, and the rest of is around uranium-238. Okay, so this is the fuel that we usually use in a Canadian technology, as you can see. But in the technologies that they use, like in a PWR, BWR, any other reactors, most of the time they use we call enriched uranium. So usually using chemical processes or using gravimetric processes, we can actually increase the percentage of uranium-235 compared to uranium-238 in the natural uranium. Okay, so most of the reactors in US, any other world, they use around 10 to 15% of uranium-235 compared to like in Canada, we use only 0.7% of uranium-235, which is a natural uranium. Okay, so inherently, most of the reactors in Canada itself, like safer when you compare the fuel compared to any other reactors that is being used throughout the world. Okay, so then in Japan and Sweden and USA, we also can find BWR reactors, which we call boiling water reactors. Okay, and in Canada and India, we have a pressurized heavy water reactor. Instead of regular water, we use heavy water. And in UK, you can find advanced gas cooled reactors. Usually, remember the moderator that we talked about? So we use water to slow down the neutrons that can actually continue the chain reaction. Instead of using water in these reactors, what they use some other like graphite. So in here, what we call is advanced gas cooled reactors is the cooling of the nuclear fuel is done using gas. In a CANDU technology, the cooling is done by the coolant that is flowing over the fuel bottles, usually is heavy water. Okay, so in Russia, we have lots of light water graphite reactor, which is similar to what you have seen in Chernobyl reactor. Okay, then also we have fast breeder reactors, which are usually used for advanced reactors, which also use high temperature gas cooled reactors, which you can find in China. Okay, so when you look at the CANDU technology, which is the name had come from Canada, deuterium and uranium. So you can see now in Canada, and deuterium is mainly an isotope of hydrogen. So usually the moderator and the coolant of a CANDU reactor is made out of a heavy water. Okay, so which is the deuterium oxide. So also we use natural uranium as the fuel. That's why we call as a CANDU technology. So this is the technology that is being used in Canadian reactors, as well as some of the CANDU reactors that is used throughout the world as well. Okay, so in a regular CANDU reactor, you can see a picture at the bottom left corner, which is a CANDU reactor core, which has lots of components in there. So one of the main component is the fuel bundle, where you have the fuel elements inside. Okay, so we usually have around 20 kilograms of uranium inside one of those fuel bottles, okay, which can power up to 100 homes, okay, for a whole year. You can see how much energy is in there in this small bundle, which has only a 0.5 meter long and around 0.1, which is around 10 centimeters diameter. Okay, so this much of energy is contained within this small volume. Okay, so in a CANDU reactor, we have around 5,000 of these fuel bundles inside. Okay, and which actually stays inside the reactor around 15 to 18 months before they actually start a refueling using online refueling system. So, and another good thing about CANDU reactor technology is online refueling technology. So when you compare the other reactors, PWR and BWR, they need to permanently shut down in order for you to refuel the reactor. But in a CANDU technology, you can do the refueling online as the reactor is in operation. So here is a close-up of a CANDU reactor. You can see this is a CANDU calendar. So when you look at a cross-section of this reactor, you can see a figure over here we have fuel channels. If you look at this little white thing that you can see here, so this is like a channel that is going through calandria. Okay, this is the whole calandria, and this is one channel is called a fuel channel. Inside one fuel channel, you're going to come across around 12 fuel bottles, which one of them is around ½ meter length. So the total length of this is around 6 meters. Okay, so when you look at very close to the fuel bundle, you can see the surrounding area, which this fuel bundle is inside what we call is a pressure tube. The pressure tube and the outside pressure tube we call is calandria tube. You can see there are different layers to keep the fuel, right, integrity as well as the pressure inside this chamber. So the pressure inside this chamber is at a very elevated pressure. Okay, so that usually kept using the pressurizer attached to all these channels. Okay, and then outside this pressurized tubes, what you see in the blue color is the moderator, where the neutrons that are being generated in the fission reaction will slow down to continue with the next generation of fission reaction. Okay. So here a comparison of nuclear power generation plants as well as the coal-fired power generation plants. So they both at the end generate electricity, but what you need to see is how it's being generated and what is being used to generate, as well as what is the pollution that is generated throughout this production of electricity for different means of power generations. Just for the comparison, I'm actually showing you on the left side is a nuclear power plant. On the right side, you can see a coal-fired power plant. So in a nuclear power plant, so what happened now, we use nuclear fission in this case to generate heat. So the heat that is generated in the interaction of the nucleus with the neutron would transfer that into a coolant. Okay, that will travel through these fuel channels. Okay, and from one end to the other, that heated coolant will go into a steam generator where the heat from the coolant would be transferred into a light water, which is the regular water. So usually this primary side and the secondary side, they never actually touch each other. They are separated by a metal, okay, from your tubes that is inside the steam generator. Okay, so in the steam generator on the secondary side, we usually regular water. So regular water is being heated. So then eventually that water becomes steam, like in a kettle. The steam would travel down into a turbine. Usually they have different stages of turbine. You have a primary turbine and the secondary turbine. So then as they're traveling through the turbine, this high quality steam will eventually become a low quality steam, so which has a higher content of water compared to the steam. So eventually that steam will come down, the low quality steam, and we will condensate the steam, usually using the water that is coming from the Lake Ontario. So this water would never touch any of the radioactive component of the reactor. Okay, so what we do, we take the lake water and we pump through the condenser to cool down this water into a level that we can pump it back into the inlet of my steam generator. So this cycle would continue. Sometimes some of the water would evaporate. Then we have some sort of feed water system that will come, a regular water, to compensate for that water. So the same process is happening in a coal-fired generation plant, okay? But only the difference is the generation of heat. The generation of heat in a coal fire is done by burning coal inside a boiler, like what you can, inside a furnace, as you can see here. So as you know, as you're burning coal, you generate lots of pollution, okay? This fly ash can have lots of elements that can actually cause so many health problems for human, okay? So just for comparison, I'm showing you some how much energy is content in a small fuel element. So if you look over here, this is one small fuel element, which is like a little bit of my finger, like tip like this here. Okay, that's the size of it. So compare that into how much energy that you need to have if you have coal, which is equivalent to 1 ton. Okay, also equivalent to 3 barrels of oil that will generate around 17,000 cubic feet of energy equivalent for natural gas. So you can see the comparison. So you can see by a little bit of uranium, you can generate so much of energy. You can see the product that you need to get rid of at the end is very little compared to the equivalent energy that will produce from coal, oil, or from natural gas. So here is a little insight into the nuclear reactor for a CANDU. So you can see onto the right side, you can see the assembly of a CANDU reactor. You can see the red one that you see here is called a CANDU calandria, where you see all these channels. We have around 400 channels that is going across this calandria. So then it's all encompasses inside a containment building, which has a very thick, heavy, thick concrete. So these are pre-stressed concrete, okay? And then this CANDU technology has a built-in safety systems, okay? So they have 2 independent safety systems if something goes wrong to shut down the reactor, okay? And then we call safety system 1 and safety system 2. In the safety system 1, we have 28 cadmium tubes sandwiched in stainless steel can drop down into the reactor to kill the reactivity. Okay, so this process will take, 1.5 seconds for the whole thing to happen, okay, which is really fast, okay? And then also we have a totally independent shutdown system that can push down, we call a gadolinium nitride, which kill the fission reaction inside. Okay, so usually it's spread throughout the whole reactor using these 6 different chambers. Okay, we call poison tanks, and we have a helium pressurized container staying there all the time. This valve would open and will push those gadolinium nitride into the reactor, killing the reactivity. Okay, so those are 2 independent shutdown systems that we have in the CANDU technology compared to other technologies. So okay, so also when you look at how the fuel is put together, the fuel itself is put together inside a pencil, which is made out of a metal, and then it's sealed properly. Also, it's inside another pressurized chamber. That chamber is inside a calandria. Calandria is inside also a containment building. So you can see there are different layers. Okay, so to protect the fuel inside, as well as to protect the people who are working during regular operation, as well as during event of an accident. Okay, there are lots of safety barriers in place in the CANDU technology. So when you look at the distribution of nuclear reactors, in America, we have lots of reactors, more than any other countries in the world. So here's a world map showing you the locations of the nuclear reactors. So you can see there are around 19 nuclear reactors here in Canada, and then there's lots of them in the US. Then you can see here lots of nuclear power plants in France, as well as China and Japan in those areas. Okay, this is a close-up picture of the Europe. So as you can see, this is the distribution. We have nuclear power plants around 449 up to date in operation throughout the whole world. USA has around over 90 power plants. France, then the China, Japan, Russia, Korea, India, Canada is next. Ukraine, United Kingdom, Sweden, Belgium, so on and so forth. Okay, so now you can see nuclear power is I think the most reliable source of power that you can have to basically reduce carbon emission. Okay, so if you want to have a clean future for our kids, I think this is the only way that we can actually generate electricity, right? Reducing the carbon emission to the environment. Okay, so here are the nuclear reactors that you can find in Canada. So Canada has been the world leader of energy production using the CANDU technology since 1952. Okay, so nuclear plays a huge part when it comes to energy mix, energy production here in Canada. So one of the main ways of producing energy here in Canada is using nuclear power plant, okay, compared to hydroelectric power, okay. And then in Bruce, we have 1, 2, 3, up to 8 nuclear reactors in Bruce A and Bruce B nuclear power plants, which generates around an average around 750 to 817 mega electron volt per nuclear power plant. In Darlington, we have 4, which is very close to where we are. Okay, and there are 4 nuclear power plants, one average in producing around 878 mega electron volt of nuclear power. Sorry, mega electrons of electricity. Okay, sorry, megawatt of electricity, my mistake. So then Pickering, we have Pickering 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, around 515 megawatt electric power is being generated. Also, we have one in Point Pro. Okay, so when you look at combining, we have close to around 19 commercial nuclear reactor power plants here in Canada. And also Canada is the second largest uranium producer. So around 20% of the uranium is produced in Saskatchewan, and 80% is being exported, right? Which is a very good thing for us to have. So most of the reactors that we use here, as you see here in Canada, is called CANDU, which uses a pressurized heavy water technology. So here are some nuclear facilities throughout Canada. You can see them. The picture in the round that you can see the nuclear facilities here in Ontario. We have facilities in Toronto, Pickering nuclear power plants, and Darlington nuclear power plants, as well as the Bruce nuclear power plants. Those are the 3 main ones here in Ontario. And then when you go to Quebec, you can see Point Lepreau, and the rest are mainly the conversion facilities. So you basically mine uranium from Saskatchewan region that you can see up here. Then usually, after you mine them, you bring them to places like in Port Hope, a conversion facility to convert those into a nuclear fuel pellets that can be used in the nuclear reactor. So here is a Google map of where the Darlington and Pickering nuclear power plants are. So the Darlington is very close to Oshawa, where our Ontario Tech University is located. And I live in Whitby, so I'm actually right in between the Pickering and Darlington nuclear power plants. Here you can see the location of Markham. So usually, if you are located close to a nuclear power plant, in an event of an emergency, you should keep what we call is the potassium iodide pills. Okay, so as you know, in a regular operation of nuclear power plants, the releases of any sort of gases or anything is minimal. But in an event of an accident, there can be quite a substantial amount of radioactive iodine can be released into the environment. So you can actually inhale them or actually get it through injection, through consuming food that has been absorbed. So in order to protect your thyroid, you need to basically take a potassium iodide pill, which is a non-radioactive potassium iodide, to saturate your thyroid, so that way you can make sure that you don't get thyroid cancer. Okay, let's talk about that in details in our future slides. So nuclear technology, CANDU technology, is not only limited to Canada, but you also can find the CANDU technology is being utilized through all the other parts of the world as well. So on Walzon in South Korea, we have 4 nuclear power plants. And then Embals in Argentina, we have 1. And then China in Kunshan, we have 2. And Romania, Commando, we have 2 of them as well. Okay, so this technology has been utilized other parts of the world as well. So now I would like to compare the effectiveness of different technologies here in Canada, and especially in a environment like here in Canada, which is, as you know, some days temperature can go really below like 40, right around minus 30 degrees, like, right? We had some of those days. So sometimes it's dark, it's cloudy, and there's no sun at all, okay? And sometimes there's no wind at all to use wind power. So I'm just showing you a diagram here. The pie diagram that you can see on your left side of the screen would give you what we call is installed power, okay? So how much has been installed? So then the power data that you see here is the power data that was captured today, around 1 o'clock today. So you can see how much power is currently being utilized, right, out of what is installed. So nuclear installed power is around 10.5 gigawatts. Okay, out of that 10.5 gigawatts, we are currently using around 9.17 gigawatts. I actually have a comparison here, I put that together. Okay, so most of the nuclear is being utilized. But when you look at the gas, it's around 10.7, okay? And then what is being utilized by the gas is around 2.29. So you can see the ratio, 2.8, 2.3 over 10.7 for gas. And for hydro, it's around 3.3 out of 9.3. Even though we have installed 9.3, currently we are using only 3.3. Is that can because maybe ice formation on top of water stream, so that actually obstructing the power generation, okay? And then wind, if you can see here, the wind power that is being utilized right now is 2.8 gigawatts compared to what is available, 5.5. And solar is very little. Solar is 0.3 over 2.7 gigawatts. So we can see now our utilization of this energy and how much is available to basically maintain the grid. Okay, as right now at home, you are in a comfort of your household because you are being heated, and you have electricity that you can see properly. That's most of that electricity is being now right now is generated from Pickering and Darlington nuclear power plants. Okay, so this is the current data as per IESO. Okay, so you can go to this website. You can see the instantaneous energy data for anyone who is interested of looking into it. Okay. So when we come to generation of nuclear fuel, so we have to look in how it's been done. So usually we dig the ground and we extract the ore from the ground, and we take that ground and we mill them and we crush them, and then we actually convert them into uranium. Eventually then you fabricate fuel from that yellow cake, we call it, into small fuel elements, and we put them into a fuel bundles. Then we utilize them the nuclear reactor. So once it's being used, we call burnt inside the nuclear reactor. So then we actually take that nuclear fuel and keep them in the nuclear facilities around 10 to 15 years until they decay the radioactivity. Then eventually transfer them into a high-level waste repositories. It can be a surface or it can be a deep geological repositories. Okay, so when we come to a nuclear radioactive waste, so the waste can generate at different levels. So some of the waste has been generated using the mining and milling process, okay? And then a fuel fabrication waste, as well as the nuclear reactor operations as the fuel is burned. So the burn product will basically still have quite a bit of radioactivity in there, as well as radioactive isotopes that is being generated as a part of a fission reaction is going to be there. So they can be highly radioactive. You need to basically dispose them accordingly. Also, some of the product can come from nuclear research facilities such as universities, TRIUMPH, and all those facilities. And some are coming from radioisotope manufacturing processes, as well as medical applications. Some of the isotopes that are being used for chemotherapy or any other medical applications can be a waste as well. We need to find a way to dispose them properly. So we can categorize that radioactive waste into 4 categories. First one is the nuclear fuel waste, okay? And the second one, low-level radioactive waste. Third one is called intermediate level radioactive waste. And the fourth one is uranium mines and mill trailings, okay? So when you come to most of the old nuclear power plants that are being decommissioned, they usually keep the waste in the facilities itself, okay? Some of the low waste, we can send it to facilities like in Chalk River nuclear facility, or maybe Montreal in Brampton. So in a university level, our students are using like a very small radioactive sources, which we call button sources, which are in like a microcurie range. A curie is a measurement that we use to measure the radioactivity. Okay, so so then some of the high-level radioactive waste, we actually store them in the nuclear reactor itself, for in a underwater in a tanks like this. Okay, most of the time the waste is transferred underground into underwater facilities like that. They keep in those tanks for around 5 to 10 years. So until we take them out from there and we send it to a deep geological repositories or long-term facilities. This is usually done here in Canada called a Nuclear Waste Management Office, NWMO. Okay, so they have long-term storage facilities. So they are also planning to have a geological repositories, right? So we can actually send the waste into very deep location of the earth and store them inside these concrete bunkers. So they are going to follow a process called adaptive phase management process. So they are right now they are looking for a suitable site for them to have this deep geological repository. So also when you look at the waste comparison, we also need to think about what is the radioactivity in those waste. Okay, so we can compare here. I'm comparing nuclear power generation versus the coal-fired power plants. So when you look at the collective waste that is coming out from there, and what is the radiation dose that can give, or any sort of a dose that can give it to people. So I'm comparing here. If a coal-fired plant is giving 100% of a dose, then the nuclear power plant will give you only 24% of the dose. You can see the comparison. So almost like 1/4 of the dose would be provided by nuclear power plant regular operations. Okay, so not only the nuclear power plants are inherently safe, also they actually produce like less waste. So when we are planning for waste management, you have to think about not only our current generation, you also have to think about our protection of future generations. Okay, so as you can see in a nuclear fission interaction, where uranium-235 atom interact with the nucleus and generate all those isotopes. Okay, it's not only 2 kinds, it can generate all different types of isotopes. They need to be kept in a safe location. Okay, so that's why we need to think about future generation as well as the current generation when you are storing them. So that's why you need to store them in a place that is going to stay there for a long time without any leak from the fuel into the environment. So we need to make sure that we protect the environment. So we need to protect your geofield as well as the water as well as the air. Okay, so that's how we plan to store all those nuclear waste in a safe manner. So when we talk about the nuclear power plants, it's not only generating electricity, it's always generate radioisotopes that are being used for so many applications. So one of the main application for radioisotopes is for radiation therapy. Okay, so also these isotopes are being used for industrial applications, which I'm going to talk briefly in our future slides. So here are some medical radioisotope facilities here in Canada. So Bruce Power, we generate radioisotopes, McMaster University, which is very close to us. BWXT, Isotope Technologies, Ontario Power Generation, Canadian Nuclear Labs, Triumph Facility, a Center for Probe Development and Commercialization. These are some of the facilities that is spread throughout the Canada that are generating medical isotopes. So some of the isotopes that are being produced can be iodine-131, molybdenum-99, which is used for radioisotope generators for in our labs. We use cesium, we generate cesium-137, cobalt-60, mainly used for food irradiation. Irradium-192. Also, we use a cyclotron, not a big, huge nuclear reactor, which generates these sort of isotopes: gadolinium-67, iodine-123, so gallium, not gadolinium, and indium-111 and thallium-201. Okay, so where can we use these isotopes? Sometimes we use for so many industrial applications. Some of the applications is to measure the level of the water in the tanks, or you can measure the density of the powder product. So we can have a radiation source on one side, and we have a detector on the other side. Based on the readings, you can see the density or the level of the water. Also, we use the radioisotopes in the transportation industry. So if you want to, once we lay a fresh concrete to the, or concrete or maybe a tar onto the ground, you want to find the thickness or the moisture content, we can use a Strotler gauge, like a gauge like what is showing up here in the picture. So there's lots of application in the industry. Another application is to basically find out the mineral explorations. So you dig a hole, you want to find out what elements they are, like 200 or 300 feet, or can be 200 or 300 meters down. So using the radiation, you can actually get an idea about the mineral composition. So we use sort of what we call activation methodology to find out the composition, because there's no way you can actually go down and measure them, right? What is available down there. Also, sometimes for agricultural industry, we use radioisotopes to find the thickness or maybe the density and how the growth is happening. So we can use radioisotopes. Also, forestry industry, if you want to find about the thickness of the wood and how the intake of the plants are happening from the soil all the way to the trees, we actually can use radioisotopes. And the other applications would be for non-destructive testing. If you wanted to see something inside a metal using non-destructive testing, like the methodologies that we follow, ultrasound, stuff like that. So we can use radiation to basically look for internal cracks, surface cracks. If I weld pieces together, I want to find the integrity of the weld. I can use like a gamma rays, or I can use X-rays. Okay, so there are lots of applications from these isotopes that are being generated in the nuclear reactor or in a cyclotron. So medical applications, Canada being one of the pioneers, inventions of some of the radiation therapy. It's been used for so many applications, right? Iodine-131 is being used for thyroid imaging. Technetium-199 is being used for cancer and heart disease diagnosis. Xenon-133 used for lung functioning. So there are lots of isotopes are being used on a day-to-day basis in our medical field. These are being produced in a nuclear reactor or in a cyclotron facility. Also, to sterilize medical supplies, like a lot of stuff that is being contaminated by human blood or any saliva can be sterilized using big sterilizers use cobalt-60 radiation sources. Also, food irradiation. Most of the meat product or can be wheat, potatoes. They can have lots of bacteria or any other contamination in there. So we can use the radiation to basically kill them. So before we consume them, okay? So it's been done in Canada all the time, as well as the US and many other world throughout the whole, many other countries throughout the whole world. It's been utilized. Food irradiation is one of the big things. So finally, I would like to talk a little bit about the potassium iodide pill, which if you are living in a close proximity around 10 kilometers to a nuclear power plant, you'll be given a potassium iodide pill. So you need to take them when chief medical officer or maybe someone has announced as a radiation incident or accident. So don't take it until that time. So if someone actually says over the radio or through the TV or through the siren that people need to take potassium iodide pill, you should take it as soon as possible. The sooner it takes is better, because iodine, radioactive iodine, iodine 135, has a very short half-life, around 8 hours, okay? So you can see that they decay very quickly. So you get a higher dose of radiation, but it's not going to stay a long time because of the half-life, okay? Because it has only 8 hours half-life. So it's very important to take your potassium iodide as quickly as possible, okay? From the time the accident happens, you have to take very quickly, okay? So that way, your thyroid will be saturated using a non-radioactive iodine, okay? So once it's been saturated, when you inhale or ingest radioactive iodine, it would not go to your thyroid. It will just pass through your system. It will go down through your urine or any other means from your system. It will not stay inside your body. But this is only for iodine, radioactive iodine. So there can be other radioactive product that can be released as an event of a radioactive accident. Okay, so it can be a cesium-137 is one of the culprits. Usually it mixes up with the food product because it can easily get into your food chain. There can be like it can be a strontium. Those are some of the isotopes that are known to us, like, that can be released in an event of a radioactive accident, such as what happened in Fukushima or maybe Chernobyl or 3 Mile Island in the past. So in a regular operation of a nuclear power plant, so the environment is being constantly monitored, because as I said, as a part of a regular operation, there can be some of the radioactive gases can release into the environment at very low levels, okay? And usually when you are designing a nuclear power plant, the scientists worked with health physicists to come up with the number we call derived intervention values, okay? DILs. So based on a critical group. So let's say, for an example, if we have a nuclear power plant in Pickering, so we picked a probable location based on the direction of the wind, where the water is going. So probable location where they can get a higher dose of radiation. We consider that location as a critical group. So usually the group is selected based on their activities and the food they consume, okay? So so what we do a design work to find out what is the maximum level those people can get. So in order for you to not to exceed the regulated levels. So based on that, we issue a license for the nuclear facility, and the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission is regularly monitoring how much they are releasing into the environment. So all those levels has to be much lower than the derived intervention levels of those radioisotopes, okay? So it's been strictly monitored and strictly controlled by CNSC for all the facilities here in Ontario as well as throughout the whole world. When it comes to the other parts of the world, it can be done by the local regulatory body under IAEA. Okay, so here you can see in a regular operation of a nuclear power plant, there can be some effluents going into the water stream, some can get into the air, can eventually fall down to the ground, can get into your food chain, and eventually end up giving you a dose. Okay, so but these levels are very, very minimal, and the dose that you are getting is very little compared to the dose that you get from other natural sources, such as you are constantly being bombarded by the radiation coming out from the space. Okay, so we are constantly bombarded, and also there's a radon gas that is coming out from the ground that are giving you a radiation dose. Okay, those things you cannot avoid. So the food that we consume is radioactive. You are radioactive, and I am radioactive. Okay, so what we do in the nuclear energy production, we actually use that radiation which is available to us to generation of electricity. Okay, this is not something foreign to us, which is the radiation is basically is all around us. We utilize that energy that is in the ground to basically produce the energy, convert that energy into electricity. Okay, so that way we can have a comfortable lifestyle, right? And actually we can have a good industrial environment, so that can support the whole community. So that will actually bring us to the end of our presentations. I will open up the floor for questions.
Thank you, Professor
Thank you, everyone.
Pereira.
Okay.
Do we have any questions from the audience? Let me see. Let me have a look.
May I have a question to the?
Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Yes, yes. So as we know that Germany has decided to abandon its nuclear energy. So do you think that's a good choice? And in your opinion, how would Germany's choice influence other countries' nuclear policies?
Okay, I'm going to bring your attention to one of the slides actually I went through here.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you look over here now, we have a nuclear power plant, we have a coal-fired power plant. So as you can see now, and how much fuel is being utilized to generate the same amount of energy. So if we are not using nuclear, then you have to use any other means of generation of electricity. So as you can see now, how the energy is being utilized today, especially like here in Canada, right? Even though we have all this available energy, due to today, right? Because we have a cold weather here in Canada, right? And sometimes we don't have sun all the time. Right now it's very sunny. Sometimes it can be cloudy. So once it's become cloudy, we cannot use solar, right? So when there's no wind, we cannot use wind energy, right? Only options is going to left up with to basically gas or nuclear if you don't have hydro, right? Some countries, they have hydro, like in Sri Lanka, here in Canada, we have hydro. But some countries, they don't have access to lots of water. So you are only left with the option of either nuclear or gas. So when you look at the pollution happening from the gas, it can be huge, humongous compared to nuclear. So if you are going in the path of basically stopping all the nuclear power plants, then you are not contributing to basically reduce the greenhouse gas emission. Eventually, the world is going to be a hotter place compared to what's going to be today if everyone started embracing any other means of maintaining the base power. Did that answer your question, Benny?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
I can't hear Cliff Chan. I think you were trying to talk. Your mic is mute.
All right, sorry. All right, so I do have a few questions for you, Shaman.
Okay.
The first one is, are we in Canada, are we self-sustainable in uranium? And do we need to import uranium for our nuclear power plants to operate?
No, I think we are self-sustained. As you can see, we are exporting quite a bit of percentage of uranium to the other countries. I think I had one of the slides actually I showed you earlier. Here. So you can see Canada is second largest uranium producer. Okay, and 80% is being exported. So we have a big, huge uranium resources here in Saskatchewan. So as you can see, Ukraine also has one of the biggest deposits, as well as in Australia.
Okay, that's great. Now that comes to my second question. I think this one a lot of Canadians would like to know, especially people in Ontario. If we are sustainable, self-sustainable in the uranium, and we do not need to buy any from other countries, so is this the solution to help save our electricity bills in the long run if we keep developing and building the nuclear power plants in Canada or in Ontario?
But you have to consider the generation of electricity in a bigger picture. So in the sense means not just the dollar figure attached to how much is the kilowatt, but also you had to think about the emission to the environment and how is that going to affect our lifestyle. So when you capture all of that together as in a one picture, so the best way to achieve a low carbon future is to basically go with nuclear energy. So we can actually go along with not only the nuclear energy, we have to start thinking about utilize the other means such as the hydroelectric, which is being utilized already here in Canada, because we have lots of water bodies, so we should not stop utilizing that. But if you really look at the generation of energy using the wind and solar, so they take so much of a space in order for you to generate a megawatt of electricity. So I think when you compare the space, how much space is you need versus how much electricity you can generate also, and how much energy and how much pollution is being done in order for you to generate those solar panels, in order to generate those wind turbines. When you look at the bigger picture, you can see the nuclear is the way to go in order for you to achieve the low carbon future.
Yeah, I think you're right on that, because we have just signed into this new law last summer called the what's it called? Net zero greenhouse gas emission, and we have to achieve that by the year 2050. So my personal opinion is nuclear is one of the way to go in order to reduce the overall greenhouse gas emission. And now, if this is the case, like nuclear power plant seems to be a good direction to go to in terms of reducing greenhouse gas. But I think a lot of people from the public also have a concern about how the nuclear reactors are going to affect the eco cycle or the environment. For example, the nuclear power plants that we have in Darlington and Pickering, right? So how are these two nuclear power plants going to affect the eco cycle or the ecosystem in Lake Ontario, for example? Are there any tests done in the past to confirm that these two power plants are totally safe to be operated?
So as you can see here, we have Darlington and Pickering nuclear power plants. And they were intentionally put close to Lake Ontario. So the reason behind is we are using the Lake Ontario water to cool down the water that is coming out from this turbine. Okay, so then when you look at the nuclear power plant operation here, the picture up here, so the water that is coming from the lake is coming from the bottom tube. Can you guys see? Okay, so this is where it's connected to the Lake Ontario. So the water that's never actually touched the radioactive part of the reactor. Okay, so but there can be some sort of a minor leaks as a part of regular operation that can actually get into our waters. But these levels can be very, very minimal. Okay, so what I'm saying is what we are releasing into water is minimal, right? And then also what we are releasing into the air, we don't usually release, right, any gases compared to what's when we are using fuel into the air, into the atmosphere. Okay, so we know that this is happening in a regular operation of a nuclear reactor, but how can we make sure? So what we do is actually we have a lab here in Whitby. We call a health physics lab for Ontario Power Generation. So their goal is to basically collect samples throughout the whole Canada. So they collect water samples, they collect air samples, means they collect soil samples, and they measure them on a daily basis. They even actually pay people to go catch fish and bring to the lab, and they actually look into those fish on a regular basis to see the radioactive content in there. So they actually publish this data, and it's available for public to basically look at them. Okay, so they are constantly monitoring to ensure that the environment is safe. And as you know, the Pickering has been there for almost 40 years, and Darlington is going now 25 years now. Okay, so we have been operating in a very safe manner, right? And people have been living very close to nuclear power plants. You can actually see them. If you go to Pickering, like waters, you can see the nuclear power plants. So, but we have been running in a very safe manner, and the nuclear power plants the technology itself has inherent safety protocols built into it, just to make sure not only the people are being protected, as well as the environmental and non-biota has been protected as a part of a regular operation of nuclear reactors.
Okay, thanks, Chairman. Anyone here has questions for Professor, Chairman? Yeah, Rich.
I think Rich has a question.
President Yan just said his question is being answered. It's good.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. First of all, thank you so much, Professor Pereira, for the very detailed presentation today. I'm from the media, so I have been writing up about the news recently by BBC, and they're talking about nuclear waste disposal, and they have a plan by the Canadian nuclear industry, which is the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. So their plan is to build a disposal facility in Ontario, either South Bruce or Agnes. It's a small town. One is west of Toronto, Mississauga. It's kind of far west. Another is even further in the northwest territory of Ontario. So the facility is it's really huge. It's really deep down, like it's CN Tower height of a deep storage facility for used nuclear rods. And of course, there are some concerns from the residents from the small town, worrying about the water contamination and but the Canadian nuclear industry like assured that the facility is, top quality. It's very safe. So can we get some insight from you about, such a large nuclear waste disposal facility and the safety concerns, please?
Okay. I think earlier I showed you a picture about the plan. So I think the Nuclear Waste Management Office, also we call NWMO, has a plan called Adaptive Phase Management Plan. So as you mentioned in your question, like, they have proposed so many facilities for this deep geological facility. Finally, they actually narrowed down to 2. Okay, and they are looking into what is the best place that they can put in. So as a part of the work that the NWMO is doing is to basically educate the public, educate the community, especially the First Nation people, like, so that's their goal. So they need to educate the people what is nuclear waste and how it's being stored, right? And what are the barriers that they actually put in place. As you can see, this is a picture of what you just talked about, like, going down like a CN tower. You can see this is the ground and going down like a CN tower. And we are storing them in a sort of a grid sort of a arrangement in a concrete barriers. So as you can see, these are the levels of protection that you're going to put in place. So you can have, let me see that I can make this picture bigger. Okay, so can I play this video? Do we have time? Can you see my screen and the video?
Yeah.
So this is a video actually put by Bruce, sorry, NWMO, I think, just to show them, like, and if I'm not mistaken. So you can see some of the work they are doing right now to ensure that the community is being educated, and then the people are working behind, like the scientists, the engineers, and the technologists and technicians. They are taking the safety as well as any leaks of any potential leak into the environment, right, into consideration. That's why they are coming with all these barriers, based on the research they are doing, to ensure that there won't be any leaks into the deep location of the ground, so that can eventually get into the water or into the soil in the near future. They're not just only thinking about this generation. When they are doing stuff like that, they have to think about the future generation as well. Which I hope that I answered that question.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Anyone else has questions for Chairman? Okay, I have one more question for you.
Okay, Cliff, go ahead.
You just mentioned about the potassium iodide pills. I believe this is mandatory now for everyone who live or who work within 10 kilometers within the proximity of the nuclear power plant to have such pills installed or stored at home or at work. What if people just move into the area and they would like to have a case of pills? Where can they contact? What authority is responsible for distributing the KI pills?
Okay, good question, and a useful question. I think if you are living close to a proximity of a nuclear power plant, initially, I think, based on the instructions given by Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, they started distributing these pills if you are living in a 10-kilometer radius from a nuclear power plant. So if you haven't got the pills, you can actually go into this website. Let me click on the website. And then it will open up called prepare2besafe.ca website. You can get lots of information about what is the potassium iodide pill, and then why am I receiving this now, okay? And what does it do? When should I take it? How much should I take it? It's showing you based on your age and whether you're pregnant or not, how much you need to take. And then are there any side effects on those pills? What is included in KI pill package? And where should I store them? If it's not enough for my family, where can I get it from? You can actually go into online form, click on that, and then you can pretty much say what kind of business you have. If I say home, then you can fill this application form and submit it, and they will send you the pills. And also you can go into a local pharmacist, also some other locations. If you go into this list, also telling you how will I be notified. As I said before, they will actually notify you through television or some sort of a media asking you to take the KI pills. Wouldn't the nuclear accident take place too quickly to react? Not really. I think they will have enough time for you to react, actually take pills. Can I give KI pills to my pet? They recommend not to give KI pills to pets. So where can I find more information about it? You can find over here. And also it will tell you the pharmacies that you can actually purchase those KI pills if you need them. Did that answer my question, your question, Cliff?
Yes, thank you. Yep.
Okay, so I actually put that the location of the website on the presentation. If you need them for the future, you can actually use that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the audience? Okay, I don't hear any questions, but I have a recommendation. If you are interested in nuclear energy, please encourage your kids, your relatives to read about nuclear energy, because we have a bad perception because of some of the accidents happened in the past, or some of the things happened in the past, like in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but those were intentional, the bombs that the people exploded. But we have been using nuclear in peaceful manner for so long time. I think it had done a tremendous job reducing the greenhouse gas emission. So I think, in my opinion, nuclear is one of the best way to basically reduce that emission. I think we need to educate our kids, our parents. Also, we should encourage our kids to get into engineering field, and also consider as a nuclear engineering as one of the path. As you know, the nuclear engineers getting paid well, and they do a great job providing a safe community and safe environment for all Canadians. Okay, so with that statement, I would like to conclude my lecture for today. And I would like to thank Cliff Chan, Scott, Rich, Benny, Yang, and everyone who actually participated for this webinar. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you very much, Sherman.
Thank you.
Thank you. One last thing, I know that your university has open house from time to time. Maybe if people are interested in your field, they can visit your labs. You can let us know the date later, and then we can help promote it.
Yeah, exactly. I think at Ontario Tech University, we have one of the unique nuclear engineering programs here in Canada. So that's the only nuclear engineering program. So if your friend or sibling or brother or anyone who's interested, please actually ask them to read and attend any of those open houses. We are willing to basically take you through and show you the facilities we have at our university and how you can actually contribute for the carbon-free future here in Canada.
All right, thank you. And now we'd like to ask Scott to deliver a closing remark for today's webinar. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Cliff. So I want to thank our guest speaker, Professor Pereira, for giving us an informative presentation. I would also like to thank our audience for participation. I hope everyone enjoyed today's webinar and have gained valuable knowledge about our nuclear technology and safety. A.C.E will continue to organize events and seminars to allow our local residents to participate. We are planning to hold seminars at least once a month to keep you informed of latest trends and developing stories in our community. So please visit our website, aceontario.org, to check out our upcoming event regularly. On behalf of A.C.E, thank you very much for your support. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Is it possible to share the website on the chat line?
Yes. Yes, I have shared the website on the chat.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, take care.